You ever notice how life gets harder the more you try to control it? Like the tighter you grip, the faster things seem to fall apart. It's wild. Most of the stress we carry doesn't come from life itself, but from how hard we're trying to make everything go a certain way. You want the relationship to work, the money to come in, the people to like you. So you obsess, you overthink, and suddenly you're stuck in a mental loop that's burning you out from the inside. But what if the exact thing you think you need, control, is actually the thing pushing everything away? What if life isn't asking you to try harder, but to care a little less, not in a reckless way, not in a nothing matters way, but in a calm, powerful, I trust myself and I trust life kind of way? Because here's the real twist. When you finally let go, when you drop the tension, the forcing, the fear, everything starts falling into place, effortlessly. And the moment you stop caring the way society taught you to, is the moment the world starts responding differently to you. 1. The illusion of control is the root of our stress. There's a strange thing about the human mind. It loves to feel in control, even when it isn't. People wake up trying to shape their day, predict every outcome, control every response. But the more they grip life like a steering wheel in a storm, the more exhausted they feel. A man might obsess over a job promotion, thinking every move must be perfect. But that obsession doesn't bring clarity. It builds anxiety. Real peace only shows up when he stops clenching so hard, when he breathes, when he lets go. And that's where most people get trapped. Not by the world, but by the belief that they're supposed to manage it all. They feel like they're failing because things aren't going exactly how they planned. But what if the problem isn't the chaos outside? What if it's the tightness inside, the inner grip that says, I need this to work or else? That or else is a lie. It's fear in disguise, and fear, it's a terrible life coach. You ever notice how things start to flow when you stop trying to force them? You stop overthinking the text you're about to send, and suddenly it lands well. You let go of stressing over a meeting, and you speak with ease. It's almost like detachment allows room for your natural self to breathe. The pressure melts, and presence steps in. Control is not what creates results, alignment does. So maybe the question isn't, how do I control this better? Maybe it's, what happens if I stop gripping so tight? Most people won't even dare to ask it, because they believe that letting go is the same as giving up. But what if that's exactly where the magic starts? 2. Caring too much blocks your flow. There's a moment we've all had. You walk into a room, maybe it's a party or a meeting, and instantly your body stiffens. You wonder what people think of you, how you're standing, whether your laugh sounds weird. That tension, it's invisible, but it's loud. It chokes your flow. But here's what most don't see. When you care less about being liked, you actually become more likable. Relaxed energy is magnetic. People don't gravitate toward perfection. They gravitate toward authenticity. It's funny how this shows up in our everyday lives. A man trying too hard to be impressive ends up feeling fake. He overthinks every sentence, analyzes every look, and misses the moment. But the guy who shows up with zero pressure, who just lets the conversation unfold without rehearsing it in his head, he's the one people remember. Why? Because presence feels good. And presence only happens when pressure dissolves. This doesn't mean you stop caring altogether. It means you care differently. You detach from the outcome and focus on the experience. Wanting to do well is fine. Obsessing over every detail, that's where the block lives. Flow doesn't come from control. It comes from trust. Trust in yourself. Trust in the moment. When that happens, you stop acting, you start being, and it's in that state where you're not trying to be someone that the real you shows up. That's when the room shifts. That's when alignment begins to happen. That's when the world leans in. Not because you chased it, but because you allowed it. Ever wonder what else begins to flow when you drop the pressure even more? 3. Attachment creates resistance. Imagine trying to hold on to water with a clenched fist. The harder you squeeze, the more it escapes. That's exactly what happens when you cling to outcomes in life. Whether it's trying to fix a relationship, land a job, or chase a specific result, that tight grip creates resistance. People can feel it, even if you don't say a word. There's a difference between desiring something and needing it. One flows with confidence, the other reeks of desperation. Think about it. You've probably had moments where you really wanted something, and the more you pushed, the further it slipped. That job interview you over-prepared for and walked away feeling stiff. That conversation where you tried so hard to be understood that it just turned awkward. Resistance isn't about the action. It's about the energy behind the action. Detachment, on the other hand, is powerful. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're not trying to control. This principle shows up everywhere: dating, money, even healing. The person constantly chasing love often repels it. The one obsessing over results usually ends up burned out. But the moment they loosen their grip, things start coming in. Why? Because detachment invites openness. And when you're open, life can finally reach you. You stop trying to manipulate the flow, and you become part of it. It's wild how the energy shifts when you stop holding so tightly. You move different, you speak different. And the world responds, not because you forced it, but because you aligned with it. Now, if letting go creates that kind of space, what starts to fill it when you open your hand even wider? 4. Letting go creates space for alignment. Most people live like life is some giant puzzle they're supposed to figure out piece by piece, forcing everything into place. But that's not how real alignment works. Alignment happens when you stop trying to force the wrong pieces to fit. It happens when you trust the process enough to let it unfold without micromanaging every step. There's a huge difference between intentional action and anxious control, and most people confuse the two every day. Letting go doesn't mean sitting back and doing nothing. It means doing your part and then surrendering the rest. It's walking into a meeting prepared, but not obsessed with impressing. It's investing energy into your goals, but not tying your entire worth to them. People who understand this tend to notice something strange. Life starts working with them. Opportunities show up without them chasing. People respond without them trying so hard to be liked. And here's what really shifts: your inner state. When you're not forcing things, you're at peace. You become available to receive, to pivot, to create without fear. That openness is what allows real alignment to take place. Instead of living in fight or flight, you begin to move in flow. You're not reacting to life. You're creating space for life to meet you halfway. That's where the magic begins, not in the grip, but in the gap. So now that the hands are open and the grip is gone, the question shifts. If control creates resistance and letting go invites alignment, what happens when you fully step into that current and let life move through you? 5. Flow is stronger than force. Think about the last time you felt truly in the zone. Maybe you were playing a sport, having a deep conversation, or working on something you love. Time disappeared. You weren't thinking about how you looked or whether you were doing it right. You were just in it. That's flow. It's a state of being where your actions come from presence, not pressure. And the moment you try to force that feeling, it vanishes. Force interrupts what flow naturally invites. This shows up in ways most people never notice. A musician writes their best melody, not when they're grinding for hours, but when they're messing around and lose track of time. A speaker gives their best talk when they forget the script and speak from the heart. Flow doesn't care about control. It responds to freedom. When you're forcing outcomes, you're actually signaling to life that you don't trust it. And when there's no trust, there's no flow, just friction. So how do you invite flow into your life? First, you stop trying to over-perfect everything. You build the habit of showing up, but you leave room for spontaneity. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head and just speak. You let go of how it's supposed to go, and instead tune into what feels right as it unfolds. That tuning, that presence, is where alignment lives. Because when you're present, you're powerful. That's how flow finds you. The craziest part? Once you experience that kind of ease, it ruins everything else. You can't go back to force without feeling it drain you. And from there, the question shifts. What would happen if you lived most of your life from that state? Not just moments, but entire days moving in flow. 6. Trust is the ultimate magnet. There's something powerful about a person who doesn't chase, doesn't beg, and doesn't need to be validated. You've probably met someone like that. They walk into a room calm, grounded, and everyone just feels their presence. That's not luck. That's trust. Not trust in others, but trust in themselves, in their timing, in life. And that kind of energy, it pulls people in like gravity. No forcing, no pretending, just real confidence built on alignment. This kind of trust isn't loud. It doesn't need to prove anything. A man who knows his value doesn't scream it. He lives it. He shows up to an interview not to impress, but to connect. He builds a business not out of desperation, but out of vision. That quiet confidence speaks volumes. You don't have to convince the world of your worth when you've already claimed it within. And that's where real magnetism begins, right where trust replaces fear. If you want to build this energy, start small. Speak your truth without explaining yourself. Make decisions without polling everyone around you. Take aligned action, even when it feels uncomfortable. Trust isn't about guarantees. It's about choosing to move even when you can't see the full path. And once you do that enough times, something incredible happens. You become unshakable, not because everything goes right, but because you don't collapse when it doesn't. That's when people start noticing without you asking. That's when life starts flowing back toward you. And the deeper you sink into that trust, the less noise you need. So the real question becomes, what happens when trust becomes your baseline, not your backup plan? 7. The paradox of effort and ease. There's a strange truth about life that most people only discover after years of burnout. The harder you chase, the more things run from you. You hustle, you push, you force outcomes, thinking that effort equals results. But often, the opposite happens. You burn energy trying to make something fit, and it slips further away. And then one day, when you stop chasing, when you ease up a little, that thing suddenly arrives. Not because you gave up, but because you finally let go. This doesn't mean effort is useless. Effort matters, but only when it's aligned. Think of it like surfing. You don't control the wave, but you do have to paddle. You show up, you position yourself, and then you catch the flow when it comes. That's how ease and effort work together. When you're aligned, your actions amplify. But when you're forcing something that's not ready or not meant for you, you block your own blessings. Look at how this plays out in real life. The couple that stops obsessing over getting pregnant, and then it happens. The guy who sends out 100 resumes with no response, then lands the perfect job when he takes a random call. That's not magic, it's energy. The more desperate you are, the more the universe mirrors that lack. But when you act from clarity, from peace, things begin to unfold without resistance. Detachment lets it in. So maybe ease isn't the absence of action. It's the presence of trust. The kind of trust that says, I'll show up, but I won't beg. And that shift changes everything, because once you realize how many good things you blocked by trying too hard, you start to wonder, what else have you been chasing that would have already arrived, if only you'd let it? 8. Shift from fear to freedom. Fear has a funny way of dressing up like responsibility. It convinces you that if you're not worrying, you're being reckless. That if you're not constantly planning, predicting and protecting, things will fall apart. But fear is a liar with a clipboard. It pretends to be in charge, but it only knows how to panic. True freedom begins the moment you stop letting fear run the show. Because fear might feel familiar, but freedom requires trust. This shift isn't about becoming careless. It's about becoming clear. When your actions come from fear, you're reacting. You're in survival mode. But when your actions come from awareness, from alignment, from trust, you move with intention. You don't have to know how everything will unfold. You just need to take the next step without gripping it to death. Fear says, what if it goes wrong? Freedom says, what if it goes right? Try this in your life. Next time something irritates you, pause. Instead of spiraling, shrug and say, hey, whatever. Watch how your energy shifts instantly. When someone doesn't text back, when a plan falls through, when the opportunity doesn't come, use that moment to practice detachment. Not because you don't care, but because you're choosing peace over panic. That's not giving up. It's growing up. It's stepping into a power that doesn't scream. It leads, and once you taste that kind of freedom, it's hard to go back to living in fear. Life becomes lighter, not because it's perfect, but because you're not gripping it so tight anymore. So what happens when you stop trying to control everything and finally let life meet you where you are?